And he emailed and said, oh no.
How you doing, guys? Good. How are you? Good. Good.
All right, let's call the meeting to order with the approval of the agenda.
Make a motion. Oh, second.
Okay. Everybody say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Approval of the minutes for the November 18th meeting. Anybody see any additions or corrections or?
No. I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve in a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same. Motion carried. Public comments, 3 minutes per person, not to exceed 30 minutes.
I'm unmuting everyone real quick. Is anyone attending the meeting via phone, wish to speak during public comment?
I do. Mary Ann Monk.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, were you speaking to the conference room first?
No, go ahead.
All right, this is regarding the rezoning of 2075 120th Avenue. On November 10th, one member of the Osceola Town Board had the courage to say the truth. Rezoning this property to A1 has the same end effect as zoning it commercial, which of course is the appearance the local government wants to avoid. You can talk a good game about the restrictions under A1, but the operational realities of what is proposed for this site are incompatible with the neighborhood. A big red building does not constitute compatible agriculturally related business. A1 is a false flag. There is nothing agrarian about an event center. It's time to be honest about the proposal for this property and what it entails. Rezoning offers no benefit to the community and a boatload of potential problems for the future. We've heard the argument that owners plan no surface alterations that would cause additional runoff to Poplar Lake. We'd be very interested to hear how an event center parks cars without doing that. They have demonstrated no understanding or curiosity about the inadequate stormwater pond on the property. Also, we've heard the argument for economic benefit, but we neighbors can't bank that against our property resale losses. One only has to take a walk down Poplar Lane to observe how visible the building is and how unshielded from noise and light pollution those residents would be. The rezoning proposal demonstrates an absolute blindness toward all that is at stake for the surrounding neighborhood. The Osceola Planning Commission and Town Board lack the courage to say no. Their motivations are unclear, and one has to wonder what has gone on behind the scenes and who really stands to benefit. Ignoring 67 signatures from 40 neighboring households surely smacks of favoritism. Exercising that favoritism toward a non-resident, incompatible commercial entity is irresponsible toward the community. Frankly, it smells fishy. It's easy to understand that local government wants to see something happen with a derelict property. So do we. But the town of Osceola has set up a lose-lose scenario, forcing a party barn on a residential neighborhood that is wholly opposed. This calls for a more creative solution. The neighborhood cannot absorb the very real costs. To rezone this property is to set up local government to fail in its duty to protect the health, safety, and welfare of its constituents. The best course of action would be to follow the town's comprehensive 2030 plan and leave the zoning alone. It takes courage to acknowledge past mistakes and correct them. And so many mistakes have been made by the previous owner, by the builder, by the town. You cannot fix all that by piling on another unforced error. It takes courage to apply best practices over pragmatism. It takes courage to play fair. Please consider the underlying truth about this rezoning and show the courage to finally do the right thing. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, there is no one in the West Conference Room for comments.
Chairman Olson, just one more opportunity for folks on the phone. I'll just unmute everybody.
Anyone else on public comment? If not, we'll close public comment. Disclosure of committee members with conflicts if something comes up. Receipt of information from other supervisors. Is there any other supervisors?
Chairman Olson, Supervisor Middleton contacted me. She wanted to call in. I don't see her here. I'm going to try these two anonymous callers.
I'm here. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Amy.
Know which one I am. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Go ahead, Supervisor Middleton.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you. So yes, I would like to talk about the event center proposal. It's in my district. It's right on the border of the town of Osceola and the town of St. Croix Falls. And we know this is a commercial activity, and really, I think any way we cut it with this A10 workaround, still in the effect on the ground ends up being a commercial activity. So while I appreciate that we have these A10 conditions that allow flexibility, and there are certainly many times when we want to have that flexibility as a planning agency to be able to say a particular activity can go there with this condition or that condition, this is a little bit beyond that. This is really kind of a way of using Ag 10 to put a commercial into a residential area. And the town's long-range comp plan actually calls for this area to be residential. So though the town passed it and the board, it's only a 3-member board, it was a 2-to-1 vote. And I think the amount of chaos and other things that the town is worried about right now has not really allowed them to give this the due diligence and kind of process that needs to happen. And I think, you know, spot zoning is not generally in public's interest. In this case, it requires, you guys really need to dig into this, have a robust conversation and consideration of these issues that have come up. We have noise issues, we have traffic concerns, we have road and driveway sightline issues. We have runoff. Backside of this runs right into a gully that goes into Poplar Lake. The history of this building, having been involved in the town of Osceola for a long time when this went up, we were always, it was always kind of a head scratcher. Like, what is this building? Why does it look like this? It does not look like a residential build. And our own inspector stopped construction when he went in and found commercial bathrooms on either end of this building. And so that didn't really match what was a residential zoned area. I mean, Chairman Nelson was the general on this, so maybe he can shed some light on this at some point. But yesterday I took a drive over there and looked at it, and with the leaves off, you can really see the topography of the line, topography of the land, the proximity of these houses that we're talking about, how close it is to the lake, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really right in the middle of the neighborhood. And so it's not okay, I think, to have a commercial activity in the neighborhood. So the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, I did a little checking on this concept of spot zoning, should be I'll just read it to you. Spot zoning should be consistent with long-range planning and based upon considerations which affect the whole community. Therefore, spot zoning should be indulged in where it is in the public interest and not solely for the benefit of the property owner requesting the rezone. And again, as I mentioned, the town's, unquote, the town's long-range comp plan calls for this area to be residential. And I know we spent a lot of time at the town going through all the pockets that we would call residential and leave them residential. And I think you guys really need to dig into this case because as you know, zoning is not the most sexy issue and not very many people generally show up to a zoning conversation. And I've been quite impressed at the number of emails that I've gotten as a district person here, and the number of phone calls, and then the number of people that have showed up at the town hearing, the county hearing, and then at the town meetings. So, I think this is beyond just a simple Ag 10 conditional use tweak. This is really goes back to a conversation of commercial in residential. So of course, nobody wants this to remain vacant. It's been a sorry thing to see it not used, but this request needs a lot of scrutiny. We need to look at kind of the community impact assessment, and we need to continue to involve the public in this. So thanks for your time this morning, and I'll be listening in the meeting. Thank you.
On to discussion on this issue, I guess. Jason?
You guys want to see any pictures on that I showed last time on that, or are we good? Okay. So at the last meeting where this was addressed and that we conducted the public hearing was closed, so that we don't have to take any public comment right now. The committee postponed to this meeting, the first meeting in December, with hopes that we would hear back from the town, and basically the town to have them reconsider and that the zoning change with their comprehensive plan. And so the town held a meeting on November 10th, and they made a motion to reconsideration of the vote on the rezoning request for 2075 120th Avenue. The vote was 2-1. The county held a public hearing and sent it back for reconsideration. There was a discussion regarding the spot zoning at the town level. It was moved and seconded by Wallace and Schmidt to return the request to the Planning Commission for further review. That motion failed on a 1-2 vote. Wallace voted yes, Whitaker and Schmidt voted no. So that motion failed. Then there was extended conversation with the board and citizens, both for and against the rezoning, parking, the pond on the property, conditional use permits, and about sending it back to the county. There was a motion, and it was moved by Whitaker and Schmidt to send the rezone back to the county with the original motion that was made with the approval of the town. Whitaker voted yes, Wallace voted no, Schmidt voted yes, so the motion passed 2-1. So we have the same vote, the same motion as what we had before. With that, I guess I can just open it up. Main thing that I would urge the committee to think about is that no matter what is coming before, if we look at our Ag 10 zoning district, the allowed and permitted uses of that district are agricultural uses, including any of the following: crop and forage production, keeping of livestock, beekeeping, nurseries, sod and Christmas tree production, floriculture, aquaculture, fur farming, and forest management. Single family, 2-family dwellings when in compliance with the density standards. Accessory buildings incidental to the residential use of the property. Home businesses, conservation design developments, schools, churches, undeveloped natural resource and open space areas. And that a farm can actually have an extra dwelling in this zoning, contractor storage yard, and then a bunkhouse. Sorry, a bunkhouse is a permitted use. So that's where, and that for a rezone, if the town is looking at their comprehensive plan, and that similar to what Amy said, that this is a residential area in their comprehensive plan, and that the Ag 10 zoning classification, it could be argued that because it is mainly single family and 2-family dwellings, that it is in alignment with their comprehensive plan at the town level. And the county's comprehensive plan is derived off from all the town's comprehensive plans. So if it's in compliance with theirs, then that it's going to be in compliance with the county's as well. So So that's basically all I've got. So.
Or may I address the issue also?
Yep.
I want to caution the committee because we've heard a lot of things like spot zoning and that kind of thing. The only thing the committee is considering today is the rezone. You actually need to put out of your mind the fact that you happen to know that this property owner may apply for a conditional use permit. The discussion on whether what they plan on doing later on with a conditional use, whether that's appropriate, that discussion should happen when and if there's actually a conditional use application. If this committee decides to not accept a rezone because of an anticipated conditional use, you're not following what you're legally obligated to do. And that's check with the comprehensive plan, make sure it's consistent with the allowable uses in Ag 10. And so I want the committee to be aware of that because so much of the discussion and public comment is really what should be considered once there's actually a conditional use application. And just from trying to defend whatever the county's decision is ultimately, I want to make sure you have that information. And so you don't get lost in the discussion today about whether whatever they want to do later on with a potential conditional use. Just because you do a rezone does not mean a conditional use application is going to be automatically approved. Obviously, that would have to come back. And that's when the discussion on whether that's appropriate should happen. So I just wanted to caution the committee to kind of stay in your lane as far as what the narrow decision is today. Thank you.
And I think having not been here at that meeting, but I did watch the tape just a couple nights ago. So I was up to speed with what everybody had to say and what went on. I'll just say, I think there was a lot of the conditional use. There was way more discussion of conditional, CUP in it than there was the zoning change. And I think we need to try to stay a little more focused on just the rezone portion of it. And I think like Malia said, is that, if there is a conditional use permit coming down the road, then that's the time to have that conversation, because that could be one of, 15 things or whatever is on there. We happen to apparently know what this one might be, but it could be any of those. And I think we need to look at it as not what we think it might be, but here's what it could be, any of these things. And realistically, there's a winery just down the road already. So I think the county has showed precedence, I think is the word I'm looking for, that, that a winery down the road was approved at some point. Any other thoughts? I guess if not, if somebody wants to make a motion to approve, not approve, I guess we're apparently we need more discussion because no one's willing to make a motion one way or the other.
Well, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Andrea Gray. I'm actually part of the barn. I own the barn.
No.
Nope.
No.
Okay.
No.
Sorry.
Unless members of the committee got questions.
So I guess, reasons somebody's for it, against it. I think I just last summer, was it? We approved this same thing down in the town of Olden, was it not, Jason?
Correct. And then June of last year, we had a very similar type of request. I had originally advised those applicants, it was Larry Loverood. He requested a winery and a wedding barn. It was a combination between him and his son. They went to the town and that same thing in that as this one here, and that we suggested for it to be zoned commercial. The town was not comfortable in Alden or in Osceola with making this commercial. But they were okay with making it Ag 10 down there, and then they had to come back through for a conditional use process. So this is a very similar type of use in that they're planning, just not the winery so much. But at the end, and that they took and were able to still operate underneath an Ag 10 zoning with a CUP. And the committee went through and assigned a bunch of conditions for them to operate. So that's one of the ways that the town felt a little bit more comfortable, is because then they have a little bit more control and a little bit more conditions on it versus being zoned to full commercial.
And I think too, Jason, I mean, then, there again, watching the last meeting, the town wants to, I believe, be very involved in the conditional use process. Now, granted, they're advisory only at that point. But I have the feeling that they could possibly have a lengthy list of things that they would like to see on a conditional use process, down the road if it gets to that point. And then I will say, just from my town board side, not county board side at all, I would see this as a slap in the face. I mean, if my town board sends it to the county, I would expect, I guess, the county to act on it. I'm sure the town has heard the same things we've heard, and yet they've moved it on and asked us to approve it now twice. So.
And I think it's important we keep in mind what Malaya just reminded us of. It's a narrow scope right now. We're not saying we're approving an event center at this point. We're saying we're approving the rezoning only. So then it's the next step where we really get into the detail.
Yeah, where we can actually have some say as to what happens.
I always tell, because I'm on our town board too, and I always remind the town board members, when the plan commission is sending us and making a recommendation to us as a board, we need to feel comfortable that our plan commission has done their due diligence and think long and hard about not going by what they're recommending. Because you got to trust that the people that are in those positions at the town level have done their work too. And I have a hard time going against what the town board and their plan commission has approved twice.
Any other comments?
Guess not.
So, Malia, if no one makes a motion for or against,
Your only other option would be to postpone to a date certain. I mean, you've got to take some action, one way or the other.
so just for information purposes, we approve it, it goes on, and we assume it's coming back at some point in the next month to 6 months, whenever, for a conditional use permit, would be a pretty safe bet. We don't approve it, then I guess my question is, what is the option for the applicants at that point? I mean, is it a done deal, or do they have?
So any decision of this committee can be appealed to the Board of Adjustment. So if either an applicant or one of the neighbors didn't like whatever decision this committee made, they could appeal that to the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment, let's say this committee denied it, Board of Adjustment denied it, it could go to circuit court. But again, what I want to say is, if a decision is made based upon what an applicant says they're going to apply for later on, that's not going to be upheld. It's just not going to be upheld. because the only thing a county can consider in a rezone is whether the permitted uses are consistent with the comprehensive plan for that area. Not the conditional use, allowable conditional uses, just the permitted uses. So you would be making, when there's an appeal from an administrative decision, it's whether the committee kept within its jurisdiction, will rather than judgment. And what you would be doing is saying, I'm going to set aside whether this complies with the comprehensive plan, and I'm going to base a decision on something I'm not legally allowed to base a decision on. So that would be the concern.
So just maybe just for my clarification, that the only thing we can base our decision on is the list that Jason read off of allowable uses.
And whether that's consistent with
the surrounding area.
And the comprehensive.
So we can't use what we know or think we know is going to happen down the road, or what would be a permitted use or a conditional use to sway our judgment one way or the other.
Right. So think about it this way. Let's say a new owner bought it and they wanted to have a nursery and sell plants out of that building, which would be a permitted use. And they come in here asking for that rezone. And you said yes. And then a week later, they sell it to a new person who says, well, this is Ag 10, I want to apply for a conditional use. You wouldn't go, gosh, I'm not going to rezone this because somebody could at some point in the future apply for this conditional use. In this case, you happen to know what the applicant is likely going to do. There was no obligation for the applicant to tell the town or the county what their plans were, but they did. So to base a decision because you happen to know something as far as a conditional use, that's where you just have to be very careful in your decision. Now, once the conditional use is applied for, that's a whole different story. Then all of this stuff becomes very relevant, whether you grant it, whether you put massive conditions on it and limit it. To ameliorate some of the concerns of the community, that's when that discussion is appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jason, if you would read those permitted uses again, just so that if nothing else, I get it, my head wrapped around it as to what we're really talking about in the rezone of just the allowable uses.
Just the allowable stuff without any permits, administrative or conditional use. Agricultural uses, including any of the following: crop and forage production, keeping of livestock, beekeeping, nursery, sod, or Christmas tree production, floriculture, aquaculture, fur farming, forest management, a single family and two-family dwelling when in compliance with the density standards, which are actually more restrictive in A10 than they are in RA5. Accessory buildings incidental to the residential use of the property, a home business, conservation design development, which is a residential design cluster type of development. So that's more of a subdivision type. Schools, churches, undeveloped natural resource and open space areas, one additional farm residence, and contractor storage yards.
So that list then is realistically all we can make this decision off of. Is the list that,
Because that's the only thing the rezone would automatically give the applicant a right to. Whereas the conditional use, that's when you decide whether that additional thing.
right, because the conditional use for anything, anything on that list of conditional uses could be turned down.
Correct, if they don't meet the
Or
conditions.
have pages of conditions attached to them. Whatever. So, does that change anybody's mind of making a motion, I would say?
I'll make a motion to approve the rezone.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the rezone. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Aye. Motion carries 3-1.
right here.
Yep. How to get the top line there today. Sign that. Then, Mr. Chair, can we just do some findings of fact quick? What I have so far is the town approved. It aligns with the town comprehensive plan and the county comprehensive plan. The property is 5.29 acres in size. There is currently a 4-bedroom residential building on the property, and that is not finished on the inside. That there was a stormwater pond that was built on the property and that, but it may have some issues. We know that. Anything else? Okay. Then just for conclusions of law, and that I took and had that it's a similar and compatible use and that to have its own Ag 10 because of the residential buildings that are allowed in that zoning district. And then again, and that the town approved because it aligns with their comprehensive plan. Anything else?
Sounds good. Whenever you're ready,
into the fence
Jason.
stuff?
Yep.
Okay. So maybe to the bottom. No, I'm sorry. I'm looking for Polk County.
Right there.
One of the bottom two there to start off. So as we mentioned before, and that we've got a compliance issue going in the town of Clam Falls right now with fences. And when we were looking at possible resolutions and that to resolve the issue, one of the things in that I kind of thought of and that was possibly looking just at our fence regulations in general as the county goes. Because right now you have to have a pretty good understanding of all the Wisconsin fence laws and also in that our ordinance, for structures and heights, it's not very clear for somebody in that to just look at our ordinance and know what kind of fence they can put up. So there's several things in that probably could be addressed. We're just bringing this up to you guys as a point of interest maybe. You don't have to do any amendments. It's just kind of some of the issues that we've run into commonly. So this here is up in the town of Bone Lake. It's on Pine Lake. We have a town road coming in, for example. And so some of the issues that we see is basically the DNR requires a 75-foot setback from any water. And because a fence is considered a structure underneath their definition of a structure. So these two dots take and are basically at the 75-foot setback. Currently, right now, even though the right-of-way here and that is all platted out, we still have a 30-foot setback off the actual road right-of-way. So the only area that they could build a privacy fence would be between the two red dots in both of these. Now that may be an issue, it may not be an issue, but they end up with kind of a two-sided fence or kind of two different types of fence because they are able to do an open fence in the first part And they're able to do an open fence back here, like a barbed wire, chain link, split rail, when I say open fence. But then, so they have, per se, a split rail fence, then they go into a 6-foot privacy fence, and then they go back into like a split rail fence going there. And we can't do anything, like I said, within that 75 foot, but I don't know if it'd be up to the committee or if the committee would be interested in changing or reducing a road setback for a fence. Now, we would suggest in that at no point that it ever be constructed on a road right of way or within the right of way so that we can obviously maintain the ditches and stuff. But that's kind of the idea behind this. So go to the other example, Bob.
So Jason, a privacy fence can only be 6 feet high, right? I mean, without a permit or?
Privacy fence, and that always requires a permit because it is a structure. However, right now, we do not decipher between a privacy fence and an accessory structure. So it can be up to 35 feet high. And that, which is one of the issues in that I think should be addressed. The tallest one I know of is on Summers Lake and it's 25 feet tall over on the east side. So verified it. So here's another example. These aren't really that abnormal in that we run into. But here's County Road C, right down by Bear Trap and Wapagasset. In this area, the county owns a varying amount of road right of way. I believe it starts at 66 feet and 65 feet and goes all the way to 120. And you can see the houses there. And if they're going to take and comply with our road setback, which on a county road is 42 feet from the right of way, that puts this end of the fence here at 108 feet from the center of the line. And up here, we'd be over 140 feet to the center line. So it kind of cuts right through where their buildings are in order to get a privacy fence along the road. And somebody might want that, and that being along the county road. So those are kind of some of the issues in that we see on a normal basis when it comes to privacy fence. Split rail fence, they'd be able to put it right along that yellow line there, which is the actual right-of-way line. So, or like a cattle fence, they're able to go right at 33 feet from the center. Or if it was here, it'd have to be back farther. But
So as long as it's open or half open, then it could be right on the line.
our current definition of a privacy fence is greater than 4 feet tall and more than 50% opaque. So if you had like a solid 3 foot tall fence, that could still be on that road right-of-way line. As soon as it's over 4 feet, then it can't be. It's got to be the setback.
We get a lot of requests for privacy fences.
A lot of them are on the lakes. So, and most people are okay with the 75-foot setback because you can at least explain that one. Because if I got my house here, my neighbors are on the sides of me, that first 75 feet, I like to be able to look, up the lake or down the lake. And so that one's pretty easy to explain to people. But then back by the road, and they're like, well, I don't want to look at his big garage, or I want to take and kind of block that in so that I don't get all their weeds, believe it or not, is a common one. So it's the road setback that people have the most problems with. Anyway, and then can we pull up that proposed ordinance? And basically right now you guys are just looking at, do we even want to look at this? Is there anything that we want to correct? Is there anything we want to change? The committee doesn't want to do anything. You don't have to do anything, But here's some of the things that are commonly regulated in that, particularly to fences. So, height, and that the first three here are probably the most important that I would suggest that the county tries to address sometime in the future. Height of the fence, both open and privacy. Do we want to have a side yard setback to it? A lot of our local cities and villages and that have like a 3 foot setback off the property line. We don't have anything for that right now. And then the road setback, some ordinances in that will actually say that it's got to be a natural color or an earth tone color. You can do that. Some say that you got to take and face the good side out to your neighbor. You can look at that. Construction materials used, put that on there. And then in northern Polk County, we've got a privacy fence that was built out of crushed junk cars. So anyway, it's not very good looking either. There was a permit pulled for it.
So again, any privacy fence, and your first one there, even if shall not be greater than 10 feet, that would still need to be 50% opaque.
Correct. In order for that to be considered a privacy fence. So, yep. I just threw that out there for a number to kind of start conversation, and that's completely arbitrary. So, and then I think that we should define open fence, what that is, because I mean, it might be, a granted or a given, and that if you define the privacy, but I think that this is a good spot to put in a height limitation for that. And I think that we also should take and cite the Wisconsin statutes for boundary fences. That's where they typically have the Wisconsin fence laws. There's like 30 different styles of fence with woven wire and barbed wire and stranded wire that make up a legal boundary fence. So I think that definition would be good to have and to cite that statute so that we're all jiving with the statute.
I think it's worth taking a look at, because it sounds like there's a lot of ambiguity there.
Yeah, we need to, I think being in Clam Falls, we need to take a look at it and perhaps do something, whatever that something is.
Right.
Is the reason that it can't be, the reason that it has to be opaque, is that tied in any way at all, Malia, to like law enforcement being able to see if they have to go to to a residence? I mean, because if my residence is 15 feet high with a solid fence, if it's, emergency services, I'll say there's no way to know what's on the other side of that 15-foot fence. So is that tied in any way to just saying that? Okay.
I mean, there are those bushes that can really block a view too significantly, so.
Okay. But no, I'm in favor of taking a look at it, and maybe we change it, maybe we don't, but at least, spend some time and take a look at it. And
so the direction for staff might be in that then that they can draft some proposed language more in depth than that from what I've got here. Would you guys like to look at like these 6 bullet points in that?
Well, they seem to make sense, those 6.
yeah, I think if we're going to look at it, we might as well look at them all. I mean, I don't know that, I think like you said, the top 3 are most certainly the most important, but number 6, we should maybe outlaw the use of used cars as construction material.
Have to do with in that being safe, and that so that they're not built of glass, so that glass gets, that's how a lot of these other ordinances. That's what I would look for, is what other counties are doing, and that to help create some of these. Yeah,
I think that the top 3 are the important, and the other 3 we might as well look at when we're there, because maybe there's something that. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, that's what I would agree with. If you get a number of requests for fences, and you said it's a little bit, you want to, let's get it narrowed down to what you can say to the people, and you know what you're kind of looking for.
It'd be nice to clear it up
a little bit.
And especially now and that with all of our ordinances being codified out there, Tim's working on that. He's been doing a lot of time on it. It's going to be awesome. And the county really needs that. But if we have specific language in that for it, then members of the public will be able to find that information easier too. So it's going to be a huge asset to the county to have that information. And the clearer we can make our ordinances is only going to benefit with this program. So. And
I think too, we want to look at that setback from the roads. I mean, that what was it, Jason, that extra 45 feet?
42 feet for a county road, 30 feet for a town road, so.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe being able to, maybe not come all the way back to the right of way, but not make it like in a couple of those instances, 108 feet from from the center of the road, maybe, maybe being able to narrow that up a little bit.
Possibly even, using the similar type of law that you guys passed here, about last year, the year before, where a town board can approve of a reduced road setback, and that for offense or something like that. 'Cause right now that doesn't apply. So, or the county highway commissioner, could take and approve of a reduced highway setback. Maybe. So I'll bring back some ideas and that they'll be arbitrary, but anyway, place to start.
Yeah, spot to start from it. Go ahead, Doug.
Just a thought, Jason, but if you reduce the setback in the right of way, then would there have to be something in the language about a breakaway? You can't have a post larger than a 4x4.
Oh, sure.
I mean, that is.
Yeah, you can't put well casing in on the corner.
No, it's a postal regulation and nobody seems to follow it.
And at no point in that would we probably write an ordinance to actually say that they can have a fence within the road right away. And that, we always want to keep it off that. So it would be that something that could be reduced for that 30 feet outside of the right of way, that maybe they could get a reduced approval from the town to be within that 30 feet up to the right of way. And then if the town says, yeah, you can go right on the right of way line, fine,
Yeah, but I like that we're on a town road, it's town approval. On a county road, it's the county approval, because every property is different. Sometimes, 30 feet means nothing, and the next time 30 feet, you can't see either direction when you hit the end of the driveway. So
and that might, also apply, in that, because if you're on a curve, in that, there might need to be more line of sight. If you're close to an intersection, in that, at least then you'd have somebody reviewing it too. And I don't think that would be a very hard amendment to make, since we've kind of got the base language for that with accessory buildings. So anyway, I can do that.
maybe if you get something, Jason, just shoot it out to the committee, beforehand. I mean, even whatever that is, if it's before the next meeting or 2 or 3 meetings down the road, whatever it is.
It's not a pressing issue though. So
Right.
a full agenda, we can skip it.
Yep. Okay. Parks, Recreation, and Trails and Dams. Bob, you're up.
Good morning, everyone. Agenda item 8A. Well, staff met, this is our update of the Stour Seven Lakes Trail Master Plan. Staff met with Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources on November 19th to discuss the review of the master plan. One outcome from that meeting was the formation of a work group, and that consists of 3 non-managerial, non-administrative DNR staff, actual trail planners and liaisons, as well as county staff. That's myself, Ben Elfelt, Tim Anderson, and Mark. We are scheduled to meet 4 times in December. In fact, coincidentally, we'll be meeting here today. That's our first meeting. And we're going to work collectively in hopefully addressing what they claim are inconsistencies within the plan. We did get this morning an outline of today's meeting, so not much to report. I will tell you that the 4 meetings that are scheduled will all happen prior to our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks. So I would assume, if all goes well, that at your next meeting, we should have a clear understanding of where we're going with that. And I can give a full update. Any questions? And then 8B, update on key tag. Well, we've been meeting. We met again. This is our third meeting, November 16th, here at the Government Center. The committee wanted a brief demonstration of our recreational map viewer, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. Brad Lundberg put that together several years ago. He updates it when needed. It's a great resource for those who want to recreate in Polk County. It has every use. It's very interactive. Interesting enough, a lot of the folks in PTAG were not aware that it exists. So that kind of points the way that maybe we need to do a better job marketing that. And it's helpful that we have representation from both the Economic Development Corporation on PTAG as well as the Polk County Information Center. So there's that. We also shared some information. It's called a Recreational Opportunities Analysis. Polk County is basically, it's a report that is within the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreational plan. That's a product of the Wisconsin DNR. It talks about all kinds of recreational trends, current uses, etc. It's broken up into districts. We're here in Polk County, we're in the Great Northwest region. And so we basically share that information. That's good baseline information for the PTAG to be aware of and understand as we work towards some trail development. We definitely shored up the 3 issues that they're going to tackle. And I'll just read those out to you again. 1, the PTAG will work on finding recreational opportunities and connections for every user. That's a big game changer. That's a big project. So that's the number 1 issue. Number 2, we really need to do a better job of an inventory of all our recreational assets. And what I mean by that, and this is interesting, this was also a product from the November meeting, as staff, particularly Ben, is doing outreach with each of our municipalities just to get a better understanding on their new initiatives or existing trails, just to be able to not only focus on Polk County-owned recreational assets, but what's happening at the municipal level. And we found out, we've learned a couple of things. There's some communities that are doing some very interesting work in trail development, in particular the city of Amory is building a safe routes to school trail. And in the city of St. Croix Falls, I believe it's on their city council agenda next Monday. They're doing an ATV route through town. So those are just some of the things that we need to learn about, because a big part of making all these connections and finding space for everyone is going to be working with those local units of government. So we're charged with that. That's kind of our homework, which we'll bring back to the PTAG group when we meet later this month. So that's the second issue. And then the third is marketing. Again, improving the marketing of all of our recreational opportunities. We talked about the recreational viewer, but we could do a better job with consistent signage, way signage, branding, things of that nature. So, product from this meeting was, again, we reaffirmed those are the 3 issues we'll be tackling. 2, we gave the PTAG homework, and they all volunteered as a group to tackle 1 project. So within the 17 or 19 members, they all volunteered to tackle 1 of the 3. And we gave them a simple planning tool, a SMART tool, where they are to work on a specific goal with some measurables, action steps, timeline, resources required. And so that's their homework. We're hoping to have still another face-to-face meeting. We have been meeting together. That is going to be added to the agenda to explore the opportunity of perhaps going virtual or some type of hybrid where for those folks who want to work together face-to-face, they can still come here, but still provide the opportunity for those who are concerned about the pandemic to still participate remotely. So So there's that. So they'll bring back their homework, break them up into work groups, and have them further refine their SMART. That's where we're at there. Any questions?
That's good. Land and water.
We'll grab Eric real quick.
Slow it down, we're moving along pretty fast.
You're funny.
I want to prove it isn't always just me who slows things down.
Come in, Eric. Yeah. Just put your.
Good holding things up for us. Gosh, all right. I'll keep moving. Can I just, oh, there
I'm gonna stick it in there yet. I'm gonna hold that. Looking at the PowerPoint, Eric?
Yeah, it's going to be, yep, that one right there, top one. Good morning. Thanks for having me this morning. This is kind of nice to be able to be back in front of the committee and report on some of the things that we do in our Land and Water Resources Department, and hope this is able to continue. As Bob's bringing this up, just a brief introduction. This is the Polk County Transect Survey, and it gets its name from the methodology of assigning transects across the landscape and following those to do a sampling and data collection effort. And go ahead, Bob, you can go to the next slide. A bit about the survey history. It was designed to collect information from the agricultural landscape and focus on ag practices, tillage systems, and crop residue management. And crop residue management is the surface residue of previous crops that's laying on the soil surface to help with soil erosion and soil moisture retention and things like that. So the survey itself was developed by Purdue University for Indiana's T by 2000 Soil Conservation Initiative, and Wisconsin also had a T by 2000 Soil Conservation Initiative. And just to explain a little bit about that, T is a value given to soils, and it's a measure of how much soil a soil can lose and still maintain productivity. And so the value is given in tons per acre per year. And so keep that in mind. It's the amount of soil that we can lose, but still maintain productivity of that particular soil for agricultural use. In 1998, the Wisconsin Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection adopted this method, and we've been conducting this survey since 1999, with setup in 98. We have approximately 815 points currently. This has fluctuated over the years. We've lost some points due to development, and we can measure that. Points are grouped in each watershed, and you see we are evaluating 15 different watersheds here in the county, and these are all on the hydrologic unit code 10, which is a medium-sized watershed. We'll talk a little bit about how we've revised that a little bit later. But most of our points in this this setup are in the southern part of the county because, as you well know, that's where most of our agricultural ground is. So most of the points are situated in the south.
Hey, Eric,
Yeah.
you said you had 815 points now, but had lost some. Any idea where you, I'll say, peaked out at one point?
Yeah, I think we were close to about over 900.
Okay.
Yep.
So more is better.
Yeah, I would say generally because we're able to, apply more acres and maybe get a more representative sample of the county. But from a time standpoint, more is difficult to find the time to do because this
Well, I mean,
survey
in
takes us.
points. Like more points is better, right?
It is generally,
Okay.
Anna. Yep. Yep, it is. But it would take us longer to reach all those points. So about 800 points is a good number. That is about 2 weeks' time to complete the survey. The survey is time sensitive, so timing is important for us because we only get a small window to perform this survey. We don't want to do it when the crops have canopied down in the lower right-hand corner there. We want to do it sometime between emergence and canopy because we need to see the soil surface. Some interesting dates here you might find kind of neat. Our survey typically happens between June 1st and July 1st. The earliest start that we've ever done was June 1st, and that happened in 2016, 2018, and this last year, 2020. Our latest start was June 25th in 2013, and that year we ended the survey, the latest we've ever ended it, in July, right before July 4th. So within each watershed, a route has been established, and that's important because we want to take a consistent route and make it as efficient as possible. But we want to hit the same points, obviously, every year. Points are traveled to and observations are documented. Due to the volume of points, this is mostly a windshield survey. So we stop at the point, look at the field to the left, look at the field to the right, and document what we see there. We do occasionally get out and verify the residue counts that have been estimated. Sometimes we need to get out in the field and even see if it's been planted or not. Go ahead, Bob. And it's not this slide, I guess. As I said before, crop residue is a major data set in this. For all route stops, residue must be estimated if it's applicable. Obviously, for forages like alfalfa, grass hay, things like that, we don't have residue to measure there. And in the form that we fill out, you'll see that we select none there. Row crops such as corn, soybeans, small grains, anything where the soil has been worked and it's harvested, where the residue is left, those would apply. And if you're not familiar with the tool where we measure residue, we use what's called a residue tape. And it's a 50-foot rope with beads every 6 inches. So we lay that out across the rows, and we'll count each bead that has residue directly underneath it. Okay? So we'll walk along that, and we'll do that 3 times within the field to get an average. And that's how we measure residue in the field. This one you'll have to click a few times, Bob, so go ahead. Oh, that's okay. Hold on right there. This is the form that we use, and we document, I don't know if you can back up, Bob. Okay. We'll document the present crop. In this case, it was corn for grain. Go ahead, click again. And then we'll go into documenting the tillage, and we've got a residue range that we enter in there. And then click one more time. And then we'll document ephemeral erosion. And ephemeral erosion is obvious visual erosion scars within the field from high rain events. Ephemeral erosion doesn't typically go below the plow layer, and it's typically wider than it is deep in the soil. I had a picture of it on one of the first slides, but you've seen this all before, I'm sure, and it's a sign of significant erosion within the field. And we do see it often after large rain events. This is a busy slide. You don't have to pay attention to what's on that report, but the point is we can develop reports on a county-wide scale or a watershed scale with this survey. And this particular report is showing us how many fields within that survey are below the tolerable soil loss level, the ones where we're doing a good job from a management standpoint, and then the number of fields and acres that are 2 times T or 3 times T or even above that, the fields that we would say could use some better management or conservation practices to minimize soil erosion. Go ahead, next slide. So these reports include tillage systems, crop types, soil loss estimations. We can query out ephemeral erosion frequency, and as I said before, all reports can be developed by watershed or countywide, and creating the reports on a watershed scale is very important from our planning standpoint, our planning purposes in our department. This particular graph is kind of a good one. Out of 143,497 total acres surveyed, this is no-till acres with greater than 30% residue cover in our county since 1999. And you see we have significantly increased our no-till acres. And we consider this a good thing. A very good trend, and credit due to a lot of innovative ag producers and a lot of work within our county promoting conservation practices. Go ahead, next slide. So we'll get into some busy graphs now, but these are important and kind of fun to look at and digest. This is tillage trends in our county in that 1999 to 2020 timeframe. And what I'd like to bring attention to are the red line and the orange line. The red is no tillage or none, which would show the number of acres of our forage crops. And the orange line is conventional tillage, moldboard plow, high intensive tillage systems, things like that. And you see those are both on the decline. What's interesting here too is there's a time period right here from 2011 to 2014, and we can kind of see how fuel prices may influence the number of passes of tillage in the field. So during that time, we had plus or minus $4 number 2 dyed diesel, and farmers were making fewer passes in the field, I think, based on this, because we see a significant drop-off of conventional tillage, which would be moldboard plow, disking, things like that, during that time. Probably one of the variables within that equation. But we see mulch tillage or conservation tillage in this gray line is on the rise. We see No-till, greater than 30% residue cover, which is, pretty heavy residue management on the rise. We see mulch tillage, which I would consider as a intensive conservation tillage. Mulch tillage 30%, greater than 30% residue cover, increasing here. So those are good signs. I think the next slide will show you kind of the shift in operations and crops over the years. So pay attention to the blue line and, whoops, back up please, Bob. I touched it, didn't I? The blue line and the orange line here. Blue line is corn. The orange line is soybeans. Corn and soybeans are king in our county, and they've increased significantly in the last 20 years. And that shows that trend. The yellow line is hay acres, and we'll show you the green line here is CRP acres, both decreasing. So as we lose our dairy operations, we have fewer acres of hay and grass hay, alfalfa, and more acres of row crop, corn and beans, and so forth. CRP, that could be driven too by a number of things, program availability, things like that. So, but generally that's on the decline too over those years.
And CRP is what?
Conservation Reserve Program. It'd be a set-aside program. The Natural Resource Conservation Service and the Farm Service Agency administer that.
Yep.
They used to call it the Soil Bank
Yep.
program.
I know, as soon as you said it, I got it.
Yep.
Thanks.
So those acres are on the decline. Next slide, please. This is maybe a confusing graph, hopefully not, but I'll explain it. The left side just basically shows how many acres of croplands that are below the tolerable soil loss levels, the ones that we see as not a large concern with regards to soil erosion, okay? And we have about 120,000 acres that overall are farmed in a way that they're maintaining productivity, okay? Bear in mind, at the end, we're surveying about 143,000 acres. We have about 120,000 acres needing T, okay? So that leaves about 20,000 acres that are a bit of a concern, and that's shown down here. And that fluctuates from year to year. So by and large, the majority of our ag land is meeting T and doing a fairly good job minimizing soil erosion. Next slide, please.
Hey, Jason,
Eric.
on that last slide there, would it be fair to say them 20,000 acres are probably 20,000 acres of hilly rolling ground?
Yeah, that could be. Yep, absolutely. Yep. Those acres, so that being said, those acres could be a place where conservation practices are implemented, high residue management, no-till cover crops, maybe even some contour strips, things like that. So next slide, please. So maybe through this, you're wondering what the uses are for our department and what value this provides. We put a lot of emphasis on this survey in our agricultural planning section of our land and water management plan. Doug, you were a part of that planning process. This was all added to that document. This used to be submitted to the Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection every year. And they would keep track of agricultural systems within the state through this. And where Department of Ag has shifted priorities and they're kind of getting that information from nutrient management planning now. So they've shifted away from the transect survey, but counties are still doing it, many counties across the state, because of the value it provides as a planning tool and keeping kind of their finger on the pulse of what's happening in their county for the ag systems. We can prioritize watersheds for conservation practice installation using this. We can also measure project-specific results. For instance, the graph that you see here is a graph that shows the soil loss levels since our farmer-led watershed council developed in the Horse Creek watershed in 2013. So prior to this, what you don't see, and I probably should have put it in there, but we had an increase in soil loss prior to 2012. Enter the Watershed Council in 2013, and we've documented a decline. We've seen a decline in soil loss since that. Credit due to that group and their efforts of promoting cover crops and no-till and things like that. We've been able to chip away and lower the soil erosion within that watershed, and that's a positive thing. It's a way that we can show those ag producers some of their efforts are producing results, and that's hugely important. One of the things that's kind of fun too throughout the year, we have interns that come through our office that don't have a lot of agricultural experience. And we're able to take them out on this survey for a couple weeks. They help us out, and we give them a pretty good knowledge base of agriculture and what happens within the ag community with regards to management, how they do things, why they do things like that. So there again, we're providing some experience to new land conservation staff. And lastly, it provides general information on ag systems, and it's important for us to be out there seeing what's happening, so we can, like today, deliver that information to you and keep on track with what's happening in our county. Next slide. A bit on the future of the survey. We're at a point of transition with this, and the program itself is no longer supported at DADCAP. We're still using it because I like the program, limping it along, for lack of a better term. But they're transitioning to the nutrient management planning software, SNAP Plus, for this survey. And SNAP Plus is a valuable program. It has a lot of good things, good features with regards to nutrient management, but it doesn't treat the transect survey very well. So I've been a little hesitant to make that transition, but we've prepared to implement that new software on this survey. We've overhauled the system, and we're just a little unsure when we'll roll that out, because the old program still is working and it gives us good reports and good data. And I don't want to start all over with a new program just yet. But so as I wrap things up here, this is the old model and our point distribution in the watersheds that we are surveying. Because we've now gone to a hydrologic unit code 12 watershed scale in all of our work, we've now went from about 16 watersheds to 42. And so with our overhaul of the transect survey on the left, you see all 42 watersheds there. And the point distribution within those watersheds is a little more even, but we have the same amount of points And I think when we do transition, we will get better data, and I think we'll have an even better sense of what's happening within the ag community, and particularly in the northern part of the county. So, are there any questions? I went through that fairly quickly, and it's maybe a little bit, yeah.
If you see a farm or a field where there is excessive soil erosion, how do you address that? Do you go up and talk to the farmer? Say they're in Clam Falls. Would you go there and talk to that farmer?
Nobody left in Clam Falls.
Yeah, eventually we would, you know. It depends on what we're seeing. You know, through the years, we've incorporated other surveys into this particular survey, like livestock facility inventories, manure pit inventories, things like that. And the non-point type field practices, we typically achieve conservation compliance through a conservation plan or implementation of cover crops, things like that. But when it comes to the livestock facilities and manure pit closures, barnyard construction, that's when we need to get on the farm, contact the producer, and reach out to them and say, hey, we've identified a concern here. We'd like to offer you assistance in maybe fixing it. It's completely voluntary at this point for us, and not saying we don't have some regulatory ability in that, but that we avoid that if possible and take a voluntary approach. And when you offer cost sharing, that helps. It's a carrot to at least get them to think about it even more, and we have been successful in implementing some of those practices we've identified on this survey and other surveys.
So when you have a transect point out there and it's a hay field, I mean, it's just, you just drive by, it doesn't really count that year. I mean,
it does count. We do document it. We'll say, oh, that point is hay. There's no tillage, and it defaults in as defaults in all the other data, and we keep driving. When we get to a cornfield, we take a little more time there. You look at it. Staff have kind of trained their eyes for the range of residue cover that we see out there. So we'll say, oh, that's 30%, 30 to 50% residue cover. Mark it. We'll mark what crop it is, and just.
So if it's a no-till field, is it almost always over 30%? I mean, when there's been zero tillage done, at least if, let's say I'm going from corn last year to soybeans this year.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's always going to be, with vice versa, it might not be 30% coming out of beans.
Unless it's been taken for silage, then, if they're chopping it and, no tilling into that, sometimes we can get less than 30% residue. But by and large, when they're taking it for grain, yep, that's 75% plus residue cover. Any other questions?
It's interesting. I had no idea we went to this level of detail. Good.
We've got a lot of history with this particular survey, and it's neat to finally have some data sets where we're seeing some trends, and we can kind of make some assumptions or put some ideas together as to what's happening out there. And development, we've lost a lot of points over the years to development. Nice flat farm fields grow good houses too, and we've lost quite a bit of ag land due to development, and we see that in this survey as well. So.
Thank you.
There you go. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thank you.
You're up again, Bob. Oh, by the way, Eric, no sunflower fields looked as good as yours did this year because they were a disaster.
So not this year?
It was a disaster in the sunflower business this year.
Okay. Too bad. They're kind of pretty out on the landscape when they're.
Well, they were still pretty, they just didn't do anything.
I don't know, can I just pull this
I'll
out?
bring it to you.
What's
I'm
that?
going to pull it out, yeah. The ship could say about it.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Eric.
Thank you.
Ten A, 2021 work plan, it's up there. I do want to just point this out. Boy, 2020 has been a busy year for this committee, no? It has. And so, having land and water come and present just one piece of their many programming that they do. I hope we can sort of look at that again a little bit more in 2021. And so what I've done is pretty much updated the 2020 work plan. We added some things that we experienced this year. I'd just like to invite you to keep in mind this department, Land and Water, who hasn't had much exposure to this committee in the past. And again, they have a plethora of other programming that they do. So with that said, I guess what I'd do is pull up a flip chart. And do you have this in your packet? I believe it is. Otherwise, so this is, again, based upon this past year's experience and agenda items, sort of a template for next year. And so these are some of the things that we can do. We'll probably kind of open it up as well and see if you have any ideas or are interested in learning more or addressing current or emerging issues that you could see coming in 2021. And so I thought I'd just collect or elicit those ideas, and then I could work with that and massage that into the 2021 work plan. With that, I provided a feeder question. What are some emerging or existing issues perhaps we're dealing with right now that this Environmental Services Committee would like to explore in 2021?
I'd like to, you said like land and water has a lot of stuff, and, usually typically they're pretty quiet in this committee. We don't see or hear a lot of them, but I'll say through these winter months, it'd be nice to hear a little more of, I'll say what's going on is, like today, it was 20 minutes. That's a pretty good presentation. It isn't too long. It isn't, too short, but just, what's going on in land and water, where I think historically we have a little more time and, January, February, March timeframes, it isn't quite so full, but just be one of those things again where all of a sudden if we've got a full meeting, it just gets pushed to the next one.
Right. Well, one example, and was something that Eric referred to, was one key stakeholder group that he works with is the farmer-led coalitions. And in particular, I think you referenced the Horse Creek Coalition and some of their work by implementing those best management practices. They had actually, tackled some of the soil erosion issues. That's an active group. There's other farmer-led coalitions that are being developed. So perhaps, is that an idea? Okay. So the farmer-led.
We also have, and I don't know that this is the right term, Bob, but don't we have some, I'm just going to call it county-run watersheds. That's probably the wrong definition. But, something that isn't, I'll say, farmer-led that maybe staff is more involved with.
Right.
We have some of them too. I'm just asking the question. I don't.
Bev, I think you were part of their 10-year lake management plan. And the watershed we're standing in right now, believe it or not, was the number one priority in terms of that needs to be done to control watershed issues. And so based on a number of criteria, so that's something we could look at is an update of 10-year lake management plan and see what this department has done and implemented in its first year, particularly for the Balsam Lake watershed.
I'm not sure I'm going to back you up there just a little bit, Bob, but maybe like there again, the farmer-led watersheds, I think we should hear about what the county is doing. You know, I mean, I'd like to hear from the farmer-led ones, but also what is the county doing in the ones that they're running or operating or whatever. Go ahead, Doug.
But just, to follow up on you, Brad, I think with what you're saying, if we go back to our 10-year plan that we looked at, there are some tremendous graphs in there, Polk County, in the watersheds, and how it affects this region and this region.
Okay, yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think there again, I will say at least through these winter months, it'd be nice to, like I said, it was 20 minutes today. I mean, we could block off 20 to 30 minutes every meeting. And if there was something, fine. And if all of a sudden it's a meeting that's checked plumb full, it just kind of gets moved to the next meeting. I mean,
Interesting, yeah.
It is very interesting.
Yeah.
Within this division, we have roughly 5 departments. We have registered deeds. We hear a lot from land information, but there's more to land information than zoning. We have GIS, we have survey, we have a real estate lister. We also oversee the forestry in the Parks Department. We've seen a lot of Mark this past year, but he's on next year quite a bit as well. And then again, we have land and law.
I think I would say, I mean, it doesn't matter to me, but I would like to hear from those that we don't hear a lot from. I mean, we hear quite a bit. Mark isn't here today, but he's here pretty often. We get a lot of forestry stuff, but there again, we don't get a lot of land and water. We don't get a lot of, GIS or whoever. And not that they have to come and present at some point, but if they have something that they would like to, I think it's a good thing to do. I mean, it
helps us understand.
It helps the committee know what's going on and what they're doing.
There's an initiative coming down the pipe with GIS across next generation 911, and it's a federal mandate that's being pushed to the state level and soon to be at the county level. We'll be looking at rural addressing again and how that will change. It's going to be a big deal.
Just another item would be, maybe you guys wouldn't have any trouble, but you and I discussed this new permitting chart or website that, you go to.
Oh, sure, the Ascent program.
Come and give us a little heads up on it, because I can't use it. I just have it.
The Ascent program is new. Yeah. That's a great idea, Doug.
Doug, I've had no problem with it because I've never heard of it just now.
I use every
I said you probably could use it.
No. Now, I need a lot of help getting out of county committee from home. Trust me, on the computer.
Oh, no kidding.
It's one click.
This has been a game changer for the land information. And our developers and plumbers and so forth.
And I think I would say throw it out to you and staff as to, to what you want to bring. I mean, you know more about probably what we should be hearing than,
We did one earlier this year for the pumpers. So those who, deal with the septic systems and just the training for them, because it's just streamlined their work and their permitting process. And it helped the hiring as well. That's something we could do, just a quick demonstration of the SLED program.
Yeah, there again, I think throw it open to everybody and whoever wants to come and present, just get it lined up and have it on the agenda and,
Get the 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then I liked, like, when we went on the tour over at D.D. Kennedy and stuff, if we, when the weather is decent again, could do more of that. You know, and maybe it doesn't even part of the meeting, maybe it's just an optional thing. I mean, it was nice to see, like at D.D. Kennedy, when it makes it real when you go out and look at the bridge and you see what poor Tracy thought she was going to fall in. But we know that
Brings back memories,
it
doesn't
makes
it,
it
Tracy?
a lot easier for us approving some of those things when you're actually out there and seeing that stuff.
That's a great observation. In fact, we're already planning for 2021, those parks and trails improvements. In fact, next week, we're meeting with Highway to talk about Algren. Remember Algren?
Yep.
Actually formalizing that trail. Yep. And so we might take you out and show you the product of that work. Apple River is getting some improvements as well. So yeah, we could definitely
We
consider
can set
that
it up
as
for
well.
2 weeks. It doesn't look like we're going to get any snow.
You looking for snow?
No, December 25th and be gone
Just-
January 1st.
Yes.
4 to 6. I don't snowmobile, so I was 4 to 6 to keep the frost from going too deep.
Oh, okay, I kind of like it. Oh, sorry.
On track. Focus.
Yeah, so whatever the whole department wants to bring, I guess, Bob, you guys figure it out and get it on the agendas, and I think it'd just be nice. There again, it doesn't have to be one every meeting, but if somebody's got something, get it on and bring it. I mean, we meet twice a month most of the time, so, yeah, I thought that today was great. It's 15, 20 minutes. You can stay focused to,
Well, thank you. If there's anything you'd like to learn about too, like for example, you might want to learn a little bit about the new, or it's been a couple of years now, but the conditional use legislation, how that's changed, or anything regarding land use, we can certainly deliver as well. But yeah, anything you are interested in just throughout the year, let me know and we'll try to fit it in when appropriate.
sounds good.
Lastly, no real divisional updates. That's kind of just a placeholder. It's on every agenda. But Chairman Olson, I think if you like, we can roll into number 11 there for our next meeting, which I believe was what,
So we'll have
October 16th? I think.
we'll have an update from the Stour Trail because your 4 meetings will be done by the 16th with the DNR, you said.
Yes, sir. Well, I will probably bring Jason back with the privacy fence amendments, if that's okay. Not sure, we won't have met, PTAC would have not met by then, so that'll be pushed to January.
But the Stour Trail update could be
That will be there.
fairly, that could be pretty significant. I mean,
That will be there.
then I would say just looking at our list there, I mean, if anybody had something, that didn't take them a horrible long time to get ready and it was ready for 2 weeks from now, Bob, regardless of who it was or what the program was,
Opportunity there.
the opportunity would be there to do I'll say kick it off and get started in a couple weeks, from anybody.
The JDA, the Joint Development Agreement for the solar farm in the range area. We would have heard back from all 4 towns by the 15th. We reached out to them, if you recall, from the last meeting just to get their input. I believe Malia was going to help us look at some of the red flags within that joint development agreement. We could bring that to the table on the 16th of December to discuss. By the way, parallel to all this, it's still going through the PSC process. And, I know we've heard back from 3 of the 4 towns now in our outreach to them about their concerns or issues with GDE.
So Bob, do we know, I mean, I believe that day that gal was here, at some point, we have a chance to put the county has a chance to put input into the Public Service Commission. Do we know when that is yet or not?
Will be in the summer. That's when they will hold their public hearing, and that's why we're trying to get on the front end of all this, is to collect input from the towns. Polk County will be an intervener, as they call it. That's a synonym for having a place at the table at that public hearing. So we want to be able to at least make the effort to get the input. Have you all look at the JDA, perhaps have an opportunity. They've mentioned this, the folks from Geronimo, now it's Renewable North, well, I forgot the name. Apple River Solar LLC. They've offered to come back and work with us if we need to refine the JDA. Preferably for the public hearing, for the public PSC. You know, Jason reached out to them. There's 4 other similar solar farms going up through the state of Wisconsin, and all of them have GADAs in place. So for us not to have one signed, or at least looked at and reviewed, would be considered an anomaly to them. And then, you know, it memorializes the project, because we really don't have a lot of control of whether or not this happens or not. But just to memorialize that, yes, there's an agreement, there's utility share payments, there's a decommissioning plan, whatever issues you guys are concerned about, this is an opportunity to do that. So I thought we'd add that to December 16th agenda. And I believe, even though it says here in January, or deer claims or wildlife damage claims, I believe he's coming on the 16th. So we'll hear that as well. So there's a couple other things there.
Well, I didn't want me to put in, I just had something I'd like to have put on the agenda.
Sure.
Oh, could we, in the next couple weeks or month or whatever, have a discussion or possible action on our conditional use permits concerning surety bonds and increased fees? A discussion of that? Concerning the swine.
Right, the CAFO. That's something the committee would like to add in 2 weeks, or do you want to, does it matter?
Is he in 2 weeks or 4 weeks?
Yeah, either way,
If we look at the agenda, you know, Jason coming back with a draft revision, amending the privacy fence permit to the shoreline protection ordinance and the comp plan. So you have Jason with the fencing amendments, updated the Star Seven Lakes master plan. That should be pretty lengthy.
how about this? How about if we put it on, but we put it on at the end and we just realize that it's one of those things that might get bumped to the next meeting. How's that?
Yeah, for 5 hours in.
Yeah, but I mean,
you know, maybe we could move it.
Yeah. But I mean, then it's there if we have time, and if it's 12:30, or you know, it's like, okay, we put it on the next meeting, kind of like the, you know. Yeah.
Thank you for your input. Any other questions?
Aaron, you're up.
Can we still get a break if it runs that long?
It depends upon if you want to talk about it or not. You know how bad.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well, Sharon, we got done in time for both of us. I'm in it, she told me. I've got to be out of here by 12:30. I said, good for you. I got to be out of here at 11:30.
Well, there you go.
There's no rush. Good job.
So how was
Getting us out of here before noon.
Yeah.
Wendy says, that doesn't look like, I told you this last time.
Right, right,
This
right.
didn't want to be long, and it was long.
Famous last words, right?
What was I thinking?
When I jumped in on my phone at the last meeting,
Yep.
it was like, I started with a fully charged phone, and before the public hearing got done, I was over sitting by my charger with my phone plugged in.
Well, I miss seeing your pretty face.
No, you liar. You liar. That's what I called. I called the clerk's office and said, go ask them if they can hear me or not, because I couldn't tell. And she comes back and says, yeah, Vincent Bob is seeing you. And I said, oh, them liars. Do not believe a word they say. So how was gun season?
Wisconsin Northwest.
Joel got a 7-point basket. I never saw
This
a
isn't our product.
Are we off?
grandson in his first year. He never saw one. So
Ask him.
it was in the neighbors for snow, you know, but we just didn't do some research. They're there.
Yeah, I shot a little fork opening morning that I turned around and I stumped and there was a deer standing. It was like, that's an adult deer. Boom.
Yes, right.
Oh, yeah, I know there was still going to be a
back to the ROA.
but then I had to take some real heat because on Sunday I was sitting in Jeremy's stand.
That jumped out at me.